So Star Trek's fifth and final season is officially going to be debuting on Paramount Plus in just over a month's time on April 4th. And April is kind of the Star Trek month in the same vein that May sort of belongs to Star Wars, I guess. Like April 5th, 2063 in the Star Trek universe is First Contact Day, where Zefram Cochrane made first contact with the Vulcans. So it's cool that they always kind of try and have a show debut in April now, or something in April. There's normally kind of like a Star Trek live stream on April 5th that Paramount has been doing the last few years, which is really cool. And Star Trek Discovery Season 5 debuting the day before that is really cool as well. But on April 4th, we're going to be getting a 2-episode premiere featuring the episodes Red Directive and Under the Twin Moons. Then throughout April and May weekly, we're going to be getting the other 8 episodes to round out the 10-episode season, which is the shortest season of the show yet. The first episode is actually going to be screened at South by Southwest next month on March 12th, so right around then we're going to start hearing the first sort of reactions and reviews to the episode, and I guess kind of the feelings and what the season is in general by people who see the episode. We also know the season is mostly going to be focused on some kind of treasure hunt that involves either a late 24th century or early 25th century Romulan ship, so there's definitely some room there for that maybe to tie back to some of the other shows. Sonequa Martin Green, who plays Michael Burnham, actually did an interview where she talked about the potential of cameos or tie-ins, and she didn't discount the idea that we'll see something, so it'd be cool to see if that maybe ties into Picard, the way Picard deals with a lot of the Romulan stuff, or maybe Next Generation, or Deep Space Nine, or Voyager. Something really cool from that era would be awesome. But in that interview, she talked about the final, shooting the season, and how they all only found out the show was ending with season 5 after they had finished filming, which meant the crew got back together a while later to shoot a new ending. She didn't say how long that new epilogue ending was or how much extra stuff they got to film, but something I've not really seen anyone talk about in relation to the series is how kind of worrying this is in terms of what it means for this being the final season, and how it's probably not going to feel like much of a final season at all besides that ending, which that ending very much may just feel tacked on at the end, super rushed, and like it doesn't really relate at all to what the season was doing or how episode 10 goes, because when it first got announced that Discovery was ending with season 5, it was more or less just reported by most places that this was an ending. Like, it was a planned ending, not a cancellation. The show was ending on its own terms, pretty much. But then around the same time, we heard that Star Trek Prodigy was cancelled, and there was nothing saying the Prodigy was just ending. Everywhere was saying the Prodigy was cancelled by Paramount, and then later on picked up for a second season by Netflix, which is coming out later this year. Also, Prodigy is amazing. It's one of the biggest surprises of current Trek. Like, I know it's a Nickelodeon show, it's aimed at kids, but genuinely, it's like Clone Wars for Star Trek. It's fantastic. But it's also been heavily talked about within the last year how much Paramount is in trouble money-wise, that their streaming service is just not doing well, that they're desperately looking to merge with someone else like Peacock, Universal, or Warner Bros. Discovery. Personally, I think absolute worst case scenario here is Warner Bros. And I mean, this is a conversation for another time, but just based off of Warner Bros. Handling of their own properties the last 10 or so years, it absolutely terrifies me what would happen to Star Trek as a brand and as a franchise if Warner Bros. Had any say. Like, we could be seeing Strange New Worlds Season 3 get completely deleted or removed from servers after filming it because of tax write-offs. That's how stupid Warner Bros. Is at the moment. I would hate if Paramount chose them to merge with. But things like Star Trek or Yellowstone were the big hitters for Paramount that they were kind of trying to use to bring in people to their streaming service, and a very big telling that they weren't doing well was when Prodigy got cancelled and Discovery was announced as ending, kind of implying that Star Trek isn't doing enough for them and that they need to concentrate on the ones that are bringing in money, like say Strange New Worlds is, for example, maybe more so than Discovery or Prodigy were. But all of this to me sounds like Discovery was just cancelled, but they are being polite and saying it's ending by giving them a chance to film a proper ending, even though it really does feel like if Paramount didn't force this, we could have seen a 6th and possibly even 7th season. And just in general, this really does make me wonder if this season is going to take a huge turn in that final episode that feels really different to the first 9, which might dampen how good the overall season is, because a super rushed 10th episode that kind of comes out of nowhere might just make it feel like a really weird season to rewatch, or just a really weird episode to rewatch. We know we're getting a Star Trek Starfleet Academy show likely next year that is going to be set in the same period as Star Trek Discovery, so that is the 31st century. And this is a project that has been in some form of development since the 1960s. I feel like every decade they try and redo this project and it never gets off the ground, but it feels like now they're finally actually doing it. Gene Roddenberry originally wanted a prequel film to come out alongside the original series in the late 60s, focusing on Starfleet Academy with the original characters. Then in the 80s, the project was brought up again once Final Frontier really underperformed and Star Trek 6: The Undiscovered Country even getting made was in huge doubt. So rather than bringing back the original cast and paying a ton of extra money on cast, they started playing with the idea of starting a new movie franchise focused on new actors and actresses playing the OG characters in a prequel film that could spin off into its own trilogy or more films if it did well, which just would have been crazy because, like, Star Trek Generations came out and that was the first Next Generation film that wrapped up some of the stuff with the original cast. If we got this Starfleet Academy stuff, we probably never would not have gotten any of the Next Generation films, which it's really weird to kind of imagine a world where none of that happened. But when they were kind of talking about this in the 90s, but then word got out to a lot of the more hardcore Trek writers and execs at the time, and they were just like, no way, we need a final film with the OG cast, so it got shelved at that point. Then brought back again in the early 2000s after Nemesis underperformed, and Star Trek The Beginning was written, featuring a Starfleet Academy movie about Kirk and co, and then that ultimately became the basis for J.J. Abrams' Star Trek 2009, since a lot of the early parts of that film take place in Starfleet Academy and with some of the cast being cadets. And finally then, back in the late 2010s, we heard a Starfleet Academy project was in development, but at the time it was also a 23rd century based show and not a 31st century based show. So we're finally getting it, at least hopefully, but it's completely different to what the original idea was. Now, I'm personally wondering if maybe Discovery being in Season 5 just means the cast has gotten quite expensive, since usually every 3 or so seasons the cast and contract prices go up, so maybe, rather than going into a Season 6, it's cheaper to start a brand new show like Starfleet Academy and carry over some of the Discovery cast to that, so that it's sort of a sequel series that continues some of the same storylines. Honestly, a little similar to what Disney is doing at the moment with Daredevil Netflix version and then their upcoming Daredevil Born Again. Sort of change some things around, make it technically be a new show when it's really a continuation just to save money. This all is something that was brought up in Soneqa's interview when she was asked about crossovers anywhere else, and she kind of just said anyone on the Discovery cast would be really down to do it. Doug Jones, who played Saru, also mentioned Starfleet Academy specifically as somewhere he'd love his character to show up, since it's set around the same time as Discovery. There is sort of a weirdness to Discovery ending though. Like, look, I'll be honest, it's my least favourite of the new Trek stuff by quite a bit, but it has had its moments. It did give us Strange New Worlds, which I absolutely adore, and it also is the reason why we're sort of in this new era of Star Trek being so big as a franchise. Like, I know a lot of people don't love what current Star Trek is in terms of people inside the fandom itself, who are big Star Trek fans for years, don't like what Star Trek is at the moment, but it is reinvigorating the franchise for a completely new audience. Like, so many people who never would have gotten into Star Trek before are now into it because of these shows. And I think it's good to kind of have a more modern gateway for a lot of these people to get into the franchise. And then when they really like the new stuff, they go back and watch Next Generation or the original series or any of the older shows and kind of really see what old Star Trek was about in comparison to new Star Trek. It just kickstarted a lot of what we're seeing right now, Discovery. And I know in general the vibe surrounding Discovery isn't that it's a great show, but I personally don't think it's ever been like terrible or even ever really bad. I think it has some great moments throughout its run, and I would feel like it's also unfair to not give them a full final season and just tell them like, hey, you can have the cast and crew back for one day, use that to make an ending. That's a bit unfair to them, who have spent since 2017, it'll be almost 10 years since season 1 came out, that the final season will come out, so to kind of do this to them is a little bit unfair and rude. But we'll see though. How do you feel about Discovery's final season? Is it something you're looking forward to, or kind of whatever about? Do you at least think they should get a final season? Are you excited for the Starfleet Academy show? And as always, if you enjoyed this video, or if you want to see more videos like this, maybe like, subscribe, comment, all that. It'd be really cool. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.